Welcome everyone to the next episode of the Catributors podcast with our reoccurring guest Yuzral. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Yuzral. I am one of the mutineers. I still occasionally do play and stream World of Warships, but of late I've mostly been getting smeared across the floor in Elden Ring. But it's amazing how getting smashed repeatedly kind of turns into fun after a while.
I mean, isn't that the basis of playing World of Warships as well?
Yeah.
When you think about it.
Yes, but in World of Warships, at least you know it's an even chance. I mean, Elden Ring, it's a Soulspawn. You know perfectly well the odds are stacked against you from the moment you say go. And, oh, hey, yeah, welcome to this big new world. Oh, hey, there's a nice and shiny. Oh, wait, you died. I mean, I don't know if either of you have played it.
I haven't, but I know plenty of content creators that are deep still in...
Suffice to say that the first thing you meet is basically meant to kill you in 2 seconds flat. The second person you meet disses you to your face, and that's gone mimetic. And the third enemy you meet is this 20-foot tall knight on armor who colossally outlevels you, and hey, yeah, you died. It's a Soulspawn. It doesn't put it Anyhow, also, I do not have a cat, so I believe some of you know Yeet.
It will suffice. We'll allow it.
Yes. One day we just have to send you cat ears or so as a gift.
Yes, they will end up on the shark, and you know it. So,
I mean, catfish are a kind of shark, so
true.
I think we have to allow it. But yeah, there's one thing we really need to start with, isn't there?
Oh yeah, there has been the big news that basically World of Warships, well, Wargaming is going to leave Russia and Belarus with all of its facilities.
This was, I think, Monday, and we don't really have anything additional since then.
No,
it must be said.
I glanced in on the World of Warships live stream, the company one, last night, and they were saying, yeah, we have nothing beyond that statement at the moment either. When we do, hopefully we can share it. So let the rampant speculation begin.
Well, the leading theory at the moment, which I think has been semi-borne out by Wargaming themselves, is that Leicester, which presumably it will go back to being called Leicester rather than WG St. Petersburg, will basically operate the servers in the Russian sphere in the same way that there's a separate company that operates Wargaming servers in China. But the big open question still is, well, who is developing World of Warships at that point? Because Wargaming obviously owns all of the IP, but they still need someone to actually develop the game. So do they outsource that to Leicester and nothing effectively changes? Or do we see them poaching a bunch of staff from Leicester to come and work in other countries, other studios that Wargaming has set up? Because we were actually just, before we started talking about, they've got studios in Vilnius, and potentially they're going to open one in Poland, in Warsaw, very shortly. It's all up in the air at the moment, but yeah, that is the big question.
There are two big clues to my mind as to what their plans are. The first one is that they shuttered the Minsk studio. Now, that was World of Tanks.
Yes.
Rather than World of Warships. But they didn't transfer that to Leicester. They closed it completely. As I understand it, the staff were basically pulled in Monday morning and said, right, look, we are leaving Belarus. You guys are all basically out of jobs if you... Well, I don't know how many of them were given the option to move to wherever Wargaming is planning to relocate. So, yeah, I mean, that is their single biggest office, as I understand it. The last numbers I heard was something like 2,000 people out of 5,500, 6,000 across the entire company. World of Tanks is still their biggest, most profitable product, and they've just shuttered the dev studio for it rather than leave it in Belarus. So The other thing, of course, is that the sanctions are making it very hard to move currency across that border now. So if they leave the dev for World of Warships in St. Petersburg, that would imply that Wargaming Cyprus, the HQ, is paying a licensing fee to Leicester to do the dev work. And that means currency moving from Cyprus into Russia, which is a huge no under the sanctions, as I understand them. So I think they have yanked the dev responsibilities away from St. Petersburg, and they're spinning up new studios for tanks and boats. And I think they've done what they've done with the Chinese. Leicester have been said, right, keep the lights on, keep the player base going. Hopefully this blows over fairly quickly and we can re-merge the firms, hopefully. But at some point, I think, yeah, the Russians are going to get hit with a version freeze, same as the Chinese were. When that happens, how far ahead they've got the content, whether or not they can actually move content into Russia, because that would imply Leicester paying a licensing fee to Wargaming, and that might result in the Russians getting pissed. Maybe they'll just get it for free, I don't know. But my money is that the dev has been shunted out of St. Petersburg, which raises its own string of questions.
I mean,
there's certainly one of the things I've seen brought up a lot is, well, what does this mean for the the update cycle, and in terms of delays and such like. So it might not potentially. It depends how much work as you're saying, how much work has been done of what's already in the pipeline. Because we're going to go on to talk about stuff that they've announced since. So there's clearly still have a bunch of stuff coming down the pipeline, but like what it might mean for the subsequent patches in terms of.
Yeah, I mean, I assume they've got 11.3 ready to go, and they've got most of 11.4 just in the final QA cycle. It depends how fast this shakes out and how fast they can spin up the new studios. Because, of course, the big unknown is how long does Vlad stay in power and how long does he push this war?
Yeah.
I mean, they've obviously done some calculation here about what this is going to mean for sort of in the the immediate short term with what's going on, but also the kind of medium and long term economic effects on Russia and sanctions and whatnot. So in a way, I think a lot of people have been lauding Wargaming for this decision, but also this was, I'm sure, a business-led decision. This wasn't some kind of moral stance, I don't think. Although, Wargaming, they I think they are, as much as any company is, against the war because war is bad for business generally.
Remember also that they had staff in Kyiv.
Yes, yeah. So I was going to get onto that, but yeah, they did make that $1 million donation to the Ukrainian Red Cross and offered to basically help relocate any of their Ukrainian staff.
Yeah, I believe last information was that they actually had managed to get all of them out. So hooray for that. At least that was the last I heard. But yeah, it's absolutely a business calculation. They have done the numbers and they are saying, look, the odds of us being able to get currency between Cyprus and Russia in any direction is going to be pretty much. So we need to yank out of there fast and pretty much amputate those off into their own company. And yes, I'm saying amputate rather than spin off, because that's basically what they've had to do. Because otherwise we are going to piss off every government in Western Europe and Eastern Europe and also North America, and we'd quite like to carry on doing business, if you don't mind. So I think they've had... Sorry.
I'd also say that there is a lot of uncertainty even after this war or what's going to happen. There's uncertainty what's going to happen in Russia. If the economic sanctions are too bad, will there be maybe like an uprising inside Russia? Will there be another faction that tries to seize power or whatnot? If a lot of the oligarchs are hurting right besides Putin, maybe some of them might think that maybe they want somebody different in charge. If the cost of living if the people are starving because the economy crashes too hard, you never know what's gonna happen to Russia now in the future, how long those sanctions are gonna be.
My
And it's
my understanding was that Putin had gone to a lot of trouble to harden his regime against any kind of coup. So I think the calculation has been that the sanctions are on for the foreseeable. And that's why they've had to compartmentalize like this.
I mean, there is Russia does have a fairly tightly controlled state propaganda machine. There isn't that much in the way of independent media.
There isn't, as I understand it, there isn't any.
Yeah, so I think the last time there was, I remember from the news, there was any big kind of popular disgruntlement with Putin was it was something to do with pension age, or raising the pension age or something like that. Something that was going to affect a lot of people economically. So I suppose if there's any hope of anything happening, it will be the economic side rather than anything else.
Yeah,
really,
but
just because,
your propaganda machine can't cover up if everybody goes in a supermarket and it's empty, sort of thing. So it depends on how hard the economy will hit the population, because there comes a certain point where there is too much backlash.
Yeah, and then it becomes a question of, well, how well can the FSB and the Oman riot units keep order? And as you say, how long until the powers that be decide that actually, no, they're better off chucking Vlad to the wolves? And then can you coordinate? Because that coup-proofing I mentioned, one thing is that it's all split up and compartmentalized. So no one bit of the Russian state, as I understand it, actually has the resources to get rid of Vlad. And you have to go out of your agency. And then you have the question of who to trust, because anyone selling out a conspiracy to Vlad can expect a pretty decent reward. Like I say, he's gone to some trouble to coup-proof his regime. So
it does lead to really just an open question of, how long he might cling on to power, because he doesn't seem inclined to go anywhere anytime soon.
I think we have to assume that, like so many before him, dictator of Russia is going to turn out to be a job for life.
Yeah.
Probably.
But unfortunately, my assumption, and I think Wargaming may have got here as well, is that those sanctions are going to stay in one form or another as long as Putin's in power. And as long as it's nigh impossible to move currency across the Belarusian and Russian borders, they can't effectively run dev studios in Belarus and Russia, so they've evacuated.
Yeah, it's interesting that there seems to have been more popular opposition in Belarus, particularly, even though Lukashenko is just as entrenched. Things like, I don't know how accurate any of this stuff is, but stuff like railway shipments being sabotaged and stuff like that.
Again, I'm calling this from memory. Lukashenko's rather shaky, despite that. The last election, I think it was 2020. They literally had to bring Russian troops and riot units in after he rigged that election. And the Belarusians decided, well, actually, no, we aren't. Oh, wait, you've got your mates in Moscow. Ah, shit. Maybe we are dealing with it then.
Yeah.
So, as to how long this lasts, roll a dice. As to what Wargaming are doing, I think they've taken the decision we need to compartmentalize. We cannot move currency into Leicester or Minsk in order to run our studios there. We are evacuating, and they are basically going into what amounts to maintenance mode until this calms down.
Yeah, I mean, World of Tanks and World of Warships and World of Tanks especially are the cash cows. They need to secure those for the future. And
they need to keep everybody happy. Because if the EU starts looking around at Wargaming site and says, hang on, you sent several million euros to Russia last month. Why? Video game studio? Not good enough. Here's your fine for breaching sanctions. So, yeah. And likewise, the Russians, if they try and move money the other way. In fact, didn't the Duma run an emergency law that they said, if you have foreign currency in Russia, the Russian government can take it? I remember reading something to that effect.
There have been
There's been a lot of wild talk in the Duma. I know. I think this one actually passed.
The whole making people play for gas in rubles thing has been obviously an attempt to shore up.
Well, that can get their hands on some foreign currency because they would have had to trade foreign for rubles, and guess who was setting the exchange rate?
Yeah.
So no, I think they're spinning up dev studios, as you say, Vilnius, Warsaw, Prague, maybe. But
they already have the base
comparative.
operation, but I guess Prague would be maybe a bit more expensive than Warsaw.
Yeah.
I don't actually know.
Prague's a lot cheaper than Western Europe. I know that much. But yeah, I don't know what Prague is like relative to Lithuania or Poland. And this is their other problem because, of course, it's the old dilemma, isn't it? You can have fast, you can have cheap, you can have good, pick any two. They need fast because they've got a ticking clock with their dev cycles. They kind of want cheap, but they also need good. And how are they going to juggle those two?
I mean, they can take some of the it's interesting because if Leicester survives and becomes independent again, then you would expect that at least the top management stays because they will keep running that company. But
Leicester, lest we forget, was a pre-existing. They were an already existing studio that Wargaming then basically bought out. Whereas Minsk was kind of like the original heart of that's where World of Tanks was developed. That was the original company base was in Belarus before they switched their corporate HQ to Cyprus for tax purposes. So that's kind of. I think Leicester might have enough wherewithal to keep going, and certainly it depends how much of a lifeline running the Russian servers is for them.
In terms of player count, I believe the Russian servers, bear in mind they've got World of Tanks and World of Warships now. Mm-hmm. I believe that in terms of player base, the Russian side of things is something like twice the size of everyone else combined. But EU and US are far more in the way of money makers for wargaming, mostly because of exchange rates and prices. So I think, as I say, Leicester have got enough to keep things going in maintenance mode, but that's another reason I don't think they've got the dev studio anymore, because devs cost.
Yeah, but what I'm thinking is the management will probably stay in Leicester, right? Because otherwise you could just transfer, you could basically just take the stuff that you want and make them an offer somewhere else if they're willing to move, right? But if all of the management stays, that means you need to get new people in for that. You can take the developers that Leicester no longer needs because they don't need to develop the game, they just need to keep it running, right? But they can't really take much of the management stuff, probably, I would assume.
They'll have need to keep the server ops, the customer service, the techs, a good chunk of the business side and stuff like that, because they've got to run that. And of course, the management to keep everybody in line. But yeah, I would not be surprised that Wargaming at least tried to evacuate key dev staff to wherever they're spinning up next, just to keep some continuity. Something, of course, that came out in last year's Brouhaha was, of course, all the documentation is in Russian. So if you're trying to spin up a new studio and you've got new programmers and they're coming in on what is now how old is World of Warships itself? Is 6.5 years old now. And of course, the big world engine it runs on is
older.
Yes, older. Let's leave it at that. You're going to need that doc. You're going to need the devs who are familiar with the code, or what's the usual expression? You've walked into somebody else's minefield.
Yeah. I mean, if they are smart, they are going to keep a lot of the people that are doing the actual work because Leicester doesn't need them anymore. I mean, people must be willing to move, but I presume a lot of them would be. So you just try to keep along a lot of people that know the code, or at least enough to train a new studio.
Yeah, to switch over to your chat thing later. Tom McIver, does that mean we have to pay in rubles and people? No, is the quick answer to that one. What's happened is that they have literally, the Belarusian and Russian operations are completely separate now, and everyone else just carries on as they were before. The big unknown from our standpoint is what this is going to do financially to Wargaming. They're being quite upfront about the fact they're going to take a huge hit from this. And if you think about it, they're losing a good chunk of revenue. Okay, they don't have to pay for CIS servers, but that's still a net loss. And they've got to spin up basically 2 full-size dev studios in a hurry. And I don't care where you park them, that's going to cost.
I mean, spin up or buy. They could looking for a small studio. I mean, they have bought some in the past. They could buy up a studio and then just to have a baseline to work with, and then just move some more devs in on.
They could, but then you still got to integrate however many legacy devs you evacuated with the new studio, and then okay, it's not as bad as having to spin them up from nothing, but there's still going to be a lead time. As I say, I think 11.3 will be okay. 11.4, we might see a wobble. I think it's 11.5, 11.6, where if the dev cycle's gonna go, that's when we're going to see it go.
It probably will have more of a noticeable impact on warships as well. I don't think the patch cycle for tanks is nearly as quick in comparison.
I don't know what the patch cycle for tanks is, to be honest. I haven't touched it in a good long while. But yeah, warships, because we know we've got this monthly patch cycle, I think that will be our first indicator if they're having any trouble or not. Maybe they pull it off, spinning up the new studio.
I mean, to be fair, they have got some experience in terms of relocations. I mean, they moved the whole tranche of people from Paris out to Prague, for example.
Yeah, but
not
they
that
were
many years ago.
They weren't devs. They were.
I know.
They were customer service. They were business admin.
It's not the same level of things, but it's not like they've never had to move, or start up new offices or move people around.
Equally, they moved their American op from San Francisco, I think it was, over to Austin.
Yeah.
So yeah, they have moved offices plenty of times before, usually when it's significantly cheaper. But I don't think they've ever relocated devs before, and certainly not on this scale.
No, this is definitely slightly
where we're in unknown territory here.
Also, it will be interesting to see, because if they now have a new dev studio, what this means for the future of the game in terms of balancing, or if we go in a different direction with what Wargaming has planned or Leicester had planned so far. Because if you spin up a new studio with a new leadership, they might want to give it their own touch. They might have their own ideas. They might look at things and be like, wait, submarines, that's stupid. Let's just get rid of them.
Maybe. Of course, the suspicion is that Submarines were Sub-Octavian's pet project. He was gone even before this happened. I think corporate are going to be running a very tight ship, pun only slightly intended, for the next few months. So it's going to be a while before we see anything from a new team. We'll probably meet the new team first, honestly.
Yeah.
But I think it'll be a good long while before they have a chance to make their mark on the game.
It will be interesting to see quite how many people decide to make the move across, like how many people they're able to poach from Leicester and how many people they're able to bring over from Minsk.
Well, there was one unsubstantiated Twitter rumor that said they'd rented 76 flats in Vilnius. But that is a single tweet, completely unsubstantiated. It could be somebody making crap up for all we know.
Yes, well, I think
it's the internet. Nobody ever lies.
Twitter might not be the most reliable news source for stuff like that.
Yeah, well, at this point, it's basically the level of gossip, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I mean, the other question is, for me, is like, how much was Wargaming like itself even influencing what happened to, for example, World of Warships? How much oversight was there, or didn't they care? Were they happy with how Leicester has run things, or but because they cut Leicester loose, is that like, okay, we don't need those people anymore, they have screwed it up, maybe we don't even want to poach that many, so you just go away and we'll try with other people?
I feel obliged to note there that they trust Leicester to keep the lights on. I mean, if the relationship was that bad between Wargaming Cyprus and as was Wargaming St. Petersburg, you'd think they'd try to find somebody else to do the maintenance. On the other hand, Leicester know what they're dealing with, so let them keep warships, but they got tanks as well.
Yeah,
So
but
that
then keeping
implies
the
to a
lights
degree-
on is different than like determining the course of the game. I'm not saying that they were completely dissatisfied with it, but maybe they looked at it and be like, okay, we don't like those numbers, or we don't like, for example, the screw up last year or what they have done since, right? I mean, you never know how much time Wargaming already was looking into the operations and maybe wasn't entirely satisfied with things or wanted to, because like when you keep Leicester intact, that means you don't, as I said, like they probably don't poach from the top management. While they shut down Minsk, they could keep high level stuff on Minsk because the studio doesn't exist anymore, right? So if you want to keep the top level personnel around, you can't like let them keep their own studio in a sense.
I'm not sure they even bothered evacuating management out of Minsk. Maybe a couple. I suspect their focus will have been on the core of technical devs and the skills and the knowledge that they really, really need to try to get out before the borders close down completely. Of course, there are visa issues as well. Because, okay, yes, you want to bring in 50, 60, 100 workers from Belarus, and Russia into the European Union right now? I can see the immigration authorities being very thorough with these people.
Probably, yeah.
So, as I say, if I was running that, my priority would be the technical staff. And okay, maybe one or two managers, but not a huge priority in my book. Get the techs out, and you can bring in corporate management from Cyprus to run things for a bit, and while the new managers find their feet.
I mean, technically true, but it helps if you have somebody familiar with the actual game, and like, I mean, if you want to keep developing the game, you need to know where you are at, what this game is about, how it works, what you want to achieve with it, where you want to go. It obviously helps if you have people familiar with it. Now, you need also some technical stuff that know the code, because otherwise you can't actually do what the management wants you to do. But you need at least enough to train new people.
Yeah, true. And we're all speculating, of course, we don't know what ruptions happened between St. Petersburg and Cyprus in the wake of Mousegate last year and everything that went on over the subsequent 6 months. We don't know what that relationship has looked like before this war started, never mind now that this war has forced every single issue to a head and has basically forced Wargaming to evacuate from Belarus and Russia. So I think we have just tripped a curse that I suspect Wargaming hoped was over last year. May we live in interesting times. Because starting July this last year, this has just been one thing after another for Wargaming. And okay, some of it's their fault, but a lot of it, in fairness, hasn't been, and they were doing better. They did not need this.
I mean, nobody needed this.
True.
But yeah, obviously we do a lot of speculation here about the future because Wargaming hasn't been very forthcoming. What they're saying is that going forward in all countries, Wargaming will continue to operate World of Warships as before, so basically nothing changes. In the immediate future for us, obviously long term it will have an impact on how the game is developed.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, no matter how they try and run this, they're going to take a huge hit on their financials this year. So where that's going to leave them with collaborations, I think we might see an impact there. Although I believe there's a data mine leak of something they already had lined up. And as you say, we will see. Hopefully our Shooty Boats game stays profitable and online, though. Hopefully.
I don't think there's any immediate danger of either it or World of Tanks disappearing, or even World of Warplanes for that matter. So
World of Warplanes is still a thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you remember me? I still exist. Yeah. No, I mean, I agree with you. I don't think they're in any danger of going bust. But neither do I think they can exactly... Oh, Fu just brought up a point in chat. World of Warplanes was being done in Kyiv.
Yes, yeah, that was the
Yes.
Ukrainian studio that was handling that. Yeah.
He also points out, the relationship probably wasn't cuddly. They've had too many bad headlines these last 8 months. As I say, I suspect they've left the Leicester management to run things, and they've just yoinked any key devs who were willing to move and who they could get out. But beyond that, I got nothing. we are speculating until we see what happens with the dev cycle, whether 11.4 and 11.5 slip while they're spinning up the studio, and where things go from there. And I suspect a lot of the staff at Wargaming don't know either, because the decisions just haven't been taken yet. Where the mid staff literally found out when we did that they were shuttering the studio. I do wonder if something happened last weekend to make Cyprus go, right, this is not going to sort itself out. We need to bail right now. Because we know that they said in the statement they've been looking at it for a couple of weeks, which implies that they started looking when the war started. But if it was an ordered end to a review process, you would think they'd at least warn their staff more than they did.
The problem is that once you start informing people, it will often immediately leak. So that's why companies might time their announcement with their official and the internal announcement at the same time and be like, okay, this is happening, right?
Fair point. And something as major as we are completely leaving the country, and any of you who aren't willing to move sorry, we're not here anymore, so you are out of a job. Yeah, you have a point there. That would have leaked within the hour. So it makes sense to drop the official statement that way. Parker, I think the war forced it. I mean, okay, they played their cards close to the chest, but they seemed quite happy with the arrangement. And they've been in Minsk for 20 years? Maybe even more, because Wargaming were doing other things before World of Tanks. I know that much.
Yeah, they I can't remember what games they started with, but
it was a load of hex-based stuff.
Yeah, that was the one that blew up. That was the one that made them, as it were.
Yeah, and as I say, they've been quite happy to be in Minsk for 20 years, if maybe even 25 now. So the fact that they have shuttered the studio is a big deal. I mean, that is OG Wargaming. Just gone. So, yeah, as I say, I think we can safely say they're moving the dev studios.
Yes.
But beyond that, I don't think even Wargaming know precisely what's going to happen over the next 3-4 months.
Well, I guess we'll, have at least some persistent topic that isn't submarines to talk about in the next however many podcasts.
Speaking of which,
yes, we move on to dev blogs now, because there is other Warships news that's come out this week that's a bit less uncertain.
Yes. I think we have 3 new dev blogs since the last one. The first is a pretty small one, and it's just some changes to test ships with the French super battleship and some other test ships that, like the French cruisers. The Maya gets nerfed again.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the stats on Maya for a while. Has she got all the 25 mil anti-air that she had historically?
I don't know. I think Maya looked pretty much like an Atago, just put at tier 7 because that's balanced. And he has been nerfed a couple of times since then because Wargaming figured out that putting an Atago at tier 7 might just be slightly strong.
Yeah, I need to give me a second to yank the numbers here, because the thing about Maya is that they're using her late war configuration. So she loses sea turret because I think that took a bomb hit or similar. And the Japanese yanked it off, plated it over, and stuck a load of 25mm guns on her. Of course, the Japanese 25mm gun being what it was, that didn't actually make much of a difference. But that's the principal argument for putting her down at tier 7. She's only got 8 guns compared to the 10 on the Myoko and the Atago. But I'm a little... maybe she's got MBRB. Oh. Okay, MBRB at tier 7 on the heavy cruiser is going to be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it also got a heal.
Yeah, and that's a biggie at 7 as well. I mean, they clearly think the stats justify the nerf, so
We'll have to see.
send it round the test cycle again and see what happens.
I mean, there's not that many at tier 7 that have a heal, so if you look at stuff like the Boise and the Neve de Julio, which, same ship, really, but they both have a really quite short range, and I'm wondering if they'll do the same with Maya. And it's not like the Japanese cruisers before kind of tier 9, 10, where you have the option of extending that with modules, have great ranges anyway, so it might be particularly short-ranged even for a Japanese cruiser.
The other thing about Maya, of course, is that if she's down at 7, she probably doesn't get the concealment module.
Yeah.
So her spotting is going to be it might be a bit better than the Miyoko, but she's still going to be looking at 10.5, give or take.
Which would still be good at tier 7.
It wouldn't be terrible. I mean, the British would outspot her, but I don't think many others would.
I mean, I forgot the stats. It has been a while, but it was pretty strong, and I don't remember a particular weakness like the range or anything. When it was first introduced, I mean, Maya has been like mentioned in Dev Blocks the first time, I think, many months ago. But the first iteration I remember was basically very overpowered on paper already. There wasn't a single weakness. It was just basically kicking ass in every stat.
Yeah,
so
I can only assume that initially I thought the drop down to 8 guns was going to be enough of a hamstring, but clearly they've decided that others were needed. And
yeah, I mean, I've expected nerfs.
Yeah, send it round the test cycle, see what happens. The German U-boats getting knocked down to a 5-second action time on Damcon.
It's interesting that it's only the German ones.
I mean, to be honest, when you pop Damcon, it's because you're containing either... Okay, where that will make a difference is containing an active sonar lock, because that means another sub that's hunting you will be able to reacquire very quickly.
Yeah,
so that's going to be the big distinction there. Everything else is kind of, well, okay, you got hit, and your solo health, you can, if you don't contain a fire or a flood immediately, well, let's face it, you're probably dead anyway. So 5 seconds or 15 seconds doesn't make a huge difference, except to sonar locks.
Now I would say like with like the airdropped depth charges, because they actually cause flooding. So usually you have like 2 flights of depth charges, right? So if you spam 2 flights of depth charges on the same target and you damage count the first flood from the first bomb that hits you, if it lasts 15 seconds, it will last long enough that you'll get out of there, right? But if it only lasts 5 seconds and the second flight is slightly delayed, then suddenly you have a sticky flood because your damage come too early.
Yeah, that is another possibility, yes. I'll concede that one. That said, it does require the flight controller to be able to aim with a 10-second offset on top of his first strike. So it'll depend on how good the sub-captain is at GTFOing. But we'll see how they evade, I think. And we'll see how it plays out in the servers. If people can stop getting out the torches and pitchforks every time they see a sub anyway. But
I mean, the subs are incredibly tanky this time around, so they certainly need a nerf.
I have to admit, I've been playing subs on the new thing. I kind of prefer the old version, where it was, okay, you're reasonably potent, but if you make one mistake, goodbye.
Yeah, Wargaming's go-to thing for unpopular ships is just remove counterplay, and they're going that route with the subs, I think.
We'll see. Of interest, Iwami, which I believe is a tier 9 premium. I forget what their base is on. They've upped the deck from 32 to 50, so goodbye Overmatch.
I think that was one of the Yamato prelim designs, right?
I think anything about tier 9 is a Yamato prelim, but I'd have to go and look again.
Iwami was the brawling secondary ship,
isn't it? Yeah. So yeah, interesting. They've cut the rudder shift, which makes sense that they want her brawling. They've increased the main battery reload by close to 10%, give or take, which again nudges you to secondaries, and you're less likely to eat an overmatch through the deck now. In fact, you won't, because 50 mil will donk even a 20-inch shell. Yeah, that package makes sense. They're not happy about her survivability while she's closing the gap.
Yeah, she's got the magical 100mm Japanese secondaries, so it looks like good changes. It's like making her tanky and less focused on main guns, basically, too.
Yeah, that's my take on that as well. Brest and Cherbourg both getting their main batteries nerfed. Patrie gets her main battery nerfed, although from what I've been hearing from the testing, Patrie is just sick and wrong.
But how can that be? It's not Russian.
Funnily enough, not every monster ship is Russian, nor is every Russian ship a monster. I know we like to joke about it, but yes.
Such a running thing in World of Tanks for so long, and then, of course, World of Warships, exactly the same. I still get comments even now under my videos sometimes. It's a trope that refuses to die.
It will. Mind you, the studio's not in Russia anymore, so... I mean, the trope probably won't die anyway, because no one's going to remember that, but hey, you never know.
I mean, maybe we can get a new trope going, depending on where they move, right?
Depending... Does Lithuania have a navy?
Well, I mean, if the studio goes there, it will have one.
True. I mean, I know if you want to go far enough back, I mean, it was technically the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, so you can argue that... I think that's pushing a point.
That might be going a little too far back.
Yeah, it's kind of like, yes, mind you, the Russian argument, it's kind of, yes, you used to own that. Well, don't tell the Italians, the Germans, or the British, because they're going to get ideas. But yeah, I mean, that 11.3 closed test changes, I didn't see anything particularly eyebrow-raising. It
Not
looked
really.
fairly sensible.
Which then brings us to the next F block. 011.4 will bring some new ships, I guess.
Yes, and if you don't mind, we need to get Hearts of Oak playing in the background here, because they are here! The line so many of us have wanted for so long. The British battle cruisers.
Indeed. Now, there's inevitably going to be some question marks about why Wargaming have chosen to do one thing over another, and they still don't have, tier 6 and tier 8?
Yeah, we're missing the 8, and we're missing the 3, the 6, and the 8. We know the tier 3 is going to be the Indefatigable, which makes sense. Tier 6 is going to be Renown. Again, makes sense, because we've got Repulse, more or less her sister, at tier 6 as well. Hawk is at tier 8 now. I think that's going to be the Hood refit, because the naming convention matches.
I have seen some heavy speculation to that effect, yes.
And yes, I mean, if they don't do a refit Hood somewhere, there's going to be a riot from the history crowd, isn't there?
I imagine so. I have to say the G3 and I3 based designs at tier 9 and 10 look particularly funky, but they were always going to. Those layouts were interesting.
Let's face it, it was not the only navy to have to do weird things to try to stay within treaty limits.
Weren't these pre-treaty designs? These were some of the monsters that were knocked on the head by the treaty. Treaties.
Yeah, a good point. I3 was proposed in 1920, so 2 years pre-treaty. And I don't know when exactly the G3 came in, but you're right. This project was effectively knocked on the head by the... Yeah, good point. My bad. I will go and watch Drakenfell videos for an hour afterwards as penance. But yes, there's a lot of Nelson about these.
Yeah, including the Tier 7 Premium they've announced, Collingwood, which does look very Nelson-esque, but with fewer, larger guns, which 490mm, that's going to be 16.5 inches?
460 is but 16.5 sounds about right. I mean, that is just going to be, Tier 7, that is just overmatched city.
Yes, I mean, you already get that with Nelson, I suppose, so...
Which makes you wonder...
It does really look like a Nelson variant more than anything else, so nothing super new there.
Yeah, makes you wonder what the armor's going to look like, and it makes you wonder what kind of punch those guns have, because, okay, if overmatch is a given, why would you take 6 16.5s over Nelson's 9 16s?
True.
We have some stats on Collingwood.
I'm guessing that one's more fixed, because one of the things that the article does say is that they haven't actually quite decided what the flavour of the main branch will be yet. So currently we have 2 possible gameplay concepts of British battle cruisers. Medium to close range bores with short firing ranges, torpedoes, and these are going to have, it's confirmed, these are going to have like underwater torp launchers, which I think will be a first for any ship in the game. I don't think we've had any ship that's got underwater.
I mean, technically the submarines count,
well,
but I would I would also note that we
That's
had the
ship.
bathtub mode.
And there have been ships placed in the game, many ships, especially I think mid to low tiers, which historically had underwater torp launchers, but they're just not in the game. So this is
pretty much all battleships, I think, tier 5 and below had a torpedo. I think a lot of the tier 6s had them, but lost them in refit. So I'm pretty sure, well, Nelson and Rodney, of course, had torps, and of course Rodney's claim of being the only battleship ever to torpedo another battleship in live fire combat. But other than that, it was one of those things that was a fad for about 1895 to about 1915, and then everyone tried and realized it was actually bonkers, and it just went away.
But of course, a lot of the refit ships still retained them, and I don't like. Well, you can't really say that about the Nelsons, though. I suppose they would have been among the last designed, because I don't think did the KGVs have.
I would have to go and look. I would assume at least some of the early drafts included them, but at some point somebody twigged that, okay, look, we can barely use these things, and we're carting around several dozen tons of ordnance. We're giving up compartment space, and we're never ever going to get them to work. So what are we doing again? But let me just yank up the Kgb specs.
Yeah, well, so while you're doing that, I'll actually read out the rest of this. So, torps with high damage but small launch sectors, so just think Mutsu, essentially. Secondary guns with high chance to set fires, as well as quick acceleration and maneuverability characteristics. At the same time, they would have average accuracy and HE pen values. The deck armour is the same as that of British heavy cruisers. Available consumables would include engine boost, def AA, and repair party. And then the second concept is long-range ships with highly accurate and powerful HE and AP, equipped with engine boost, defensive, and a standard repair party. They would not have improved maneuverability or good armor.
Yeah, so basically either the kitey, snipey style or the sprint in ambush and blam away style that we see with Yukon.
Which, to be honest, I would kind of prefer the more brawly style. I think that would be
definitely
much more interesting gameplay-wise.
I mean, if I read long-range ships with high accuracy and powerful HE and IP shows, that reach pretty much like a Thunderer, like that very balanced ship that has never been a problem. Why not recreate a line of Thunderers, right? Maybe with more range this time.
Am I detecting sarcasm?
Possibly.
But, no, I mean, a quick scooch round suggests that KGVs never had torpedo tubes, but they are post-treaty designed. So, well, I say post-treaty. They were started in, 28, give or take? So it was kind of a, well, we might need these, but be ready to go with the design. So yeah, I think Nelson and Rodney were the last British battleships to actually have torpedoes as designed. But yeah, it will be interesting. I mean, presumably we will see a lot of both variants running around the maps over the next 3-4 months.
I mean, it's interesting that they're basically testing both styles only on the tier 10, and yet the other ships, well, at least half of them already have stats. And also they say they have a clone that they have like St. Vincent and St. Lawrence, but they only provide stats for one of them, St. Vincent. Or at least I haven't seen the other one in the stats yet.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, I guess we can at least say these stats are even more preliminary than usual. If we know they're going to be
I think we have to say that, yeah, this is all very, very, very subject to change. At this point, treat it all as basically being written in pencil and smoke signals.
True. But if they like already go into the detail that they say, hey, we want to try 2 different concepts and they have the name for the concepts, I would have expected them to have preliminary stats for both concepts, not just one. I presume that one is the brawling one.
Well, we don't know which is which, so that's going to be fun when we start running into these in testing.
Yeah, but like
it's going to be a case of wait and see what it does. If it runs away,
it's probably a battleship, in a brawling battleship.
Yes. Is it running towards you or running away? Now you know which version you've got. But I mean,
interestingly, St. Vincent has 19.5 kilometer range, so that it's not the most range, so that falls more like brawling to me. Only 25 millimeter plating though, which isn't that great for brawling. But then again, they're supposed to be battle cruisers, I guess.
It also fits with what we saw with Repulse over Christmas. They thinned down her armor relative to the tier as well, if I remember correctly. So they were presumably leaning that way with the battlecruiser. They did it with the German Schlachtkreutzer as well, didn't they?
Yeah, although like the tier 10 has technically 25 millimeter nose armor, but it's like also only 25 millimeters high because the rest is like an icebreaker. So it has a 60 millimeter icebreaker, and then it has about, like a pixel of 25 millimeter on top of that.
Yes, true. The internal armor is always the sting in the tail there. But yeah, I'd say I kind of want to see the Hawk just to confirm whether or not it's actually a hood refit. I mean, if it isn't, there's probably going to be a riot. And of course, the Germans are getting well, I swear is a Super Hindenburg, the Clausewitz.
Yes, this is the other one that's announced in this article. Just
why they aren't just calling these things Tier 11, I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Tier 11 Hindenburg, basically.
12 210 millimeter guns.
Well, that's basically Hindy's main battery, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's not a huge thing. There'll be a higher HP, better armor. Presumably the guns are cycling faster, and of course it's got more torpedoes.
However, it will not have any unique super ship mechanics. So its gimmick is it doesn't have a gimmick. It's just better than the Hindenburg.
Well, it is superior German engineering. It requires no gimmick. Its gimmick is superior German technology. Basically, it's a Tier 11 Hindenburg, and I honestly don't. I'm honestly just waiting for them to just fess up and admit that the super ships are Tier 11.
I mean, they are treated exactly like Tier 11 by the matchmaking by everything. They just don't want to call it Tier 11 for some reason.
Are they? Oh, because if it was Tier 11, you wouldn't think they'd let it mesh with Tier 8, and
they can't.
They can't. Okay, fine. Yeah,
well, unless you're fail division. I've met like fail divisions Tier 9 and Tier 8 that got drawn into a super ship game, and that broke the matchmaker, so there were like 8 ships only per team because they sat so long in the queue, and then it was just forced in,
Well, let's face it, how often do you see a 9-8 division? Yeah, I would. They might as well just. Why they haven't just changed it, I have no idea. When they were prototyping the first few, it made sense, but now they're very obviously going for one of everything.
Yes.
Mind you, they can still do incomplete trees, or unless they developed an aversion to that. So, just call it tier 11.
Maybe they think like it sells better if they call it super ship, or maybe it's because they wanna have a special economy, or maybe it's because they 1 point said that they would never go beyond tier 10. I don't know. I mean, there might be. It's just a marketing. It's for all gameplay purposes. It's tier 11.
I got nothing. I got nothing whatsoever as to why they've gone that route. But gone that road they have, so we'll see what happens.
It's actually stats right down at the bottom underneath the Collingwood.
Yeah.
So
it has 16mm plating. That's interesting for a battleship, isn't it?
Clausewitz is Clausewitz is a cruiser.
No, I was Collingwood.
Oh, Collingwood. Well, tier 8, bear in mind that they thin it down a tier effectively because it's a battle cruiser rather than a battleship. 16 versus what? A tier 7 would normally have what? 25?
Something like that, I think.
Yeah, whereas the tier 6s generally come in at 16. 16 mil plating to me makes sense, given their general trends so far. But yes, that will make, and if it's got the same armor layout as Nelson with that wide, long plate, it will have a very punchable face, I think is the best way to put it. Because Nelson, I don't know if you remember Nelson's armor layout. Nelson's got the same problem. The armor plate is literally all or nothing on the sides, and literally the entire bow profile, when you look at it end on, is 16 millimeters. Or maybe 25. It's overmatched city either way if somebody is throwing 15s or 16s at you.
Yeah.
32 is tier 8 battleship territory. So I think it's 25 on the 7s normally.
Yeah, I think so too.
If it has Nelson's heel or if it's just going to be a regular heel. Because I don't think it actually says.
Give me a second. Damage control party, no mention of any modifications. If it's got Nelson's armor layout, I hope it's got Nelson's super heel, or it's going to be an incredibly squishy boat, even by battlecruiser standards.
Also, maximum speed 25 knots. That isn't Nelson faster than that? I haven't played Nelson in a while.
Around that,
I would have to load the game and check. Give me a moment.
I don't think it's far off.
Neither do I. I want to say 27 or 28.
Yeah, I would have said something. But maybe that's with a speed flag, who knows?
Maybe. I don't think it is. I mean, I vaguely remember something about Rodney getting up past 28 when she was chasing the Bismarck, but she stripped her turbines in the process and had to go in for refit immediately afterwards. As I said, I'm just loading up warships now. I'll check.
Oh, well, I've beat you to it on the Warehouse Fitting Tool. Base speed is 24 knots.
Oh. Okay, so it's even faster than Nelson. By 1 knot.
Okay. I mean...
I think 25 puts it around the Queen Elizabeth's.
Yeah, the Lizzies were doing 25 because, of course, I think it was Jellicoe got allegedly said that if he'd got small tube boilers into the Queen Elizabeth, he would. It was, what was it he said? He at the end of his career, Jellicoe says something about he had one big failure when he was running the Navy, and the speculation is that it was he let the Queen Elizabeth be built with the older, larger tube boilers instead of the newer, small tube ones, and he thought you could have. With the better boilers, you could have got a Lizzie up to 30 knots. But again, that's something I'm hazy on. But
oh well, we'll probably get out some future premium 30-knot warspite. That would be quite something.
That it would, yes. That would be a 30-knot warspite. Oh, and this would have been in World War One.
Yes.
Yeah, that would have been a very nasty shock for the High Seas fleet. All right, Nelson.
I've now opened Nelson also in the wiki, so it looks like that the Collingwood has actually it has bigger guns, but it has less HE alpha and more AP alpha. Still a pretty good fire chance.
So AP and basically overmatched for this thing. Then, what's its rate of fire?
It's 25 on the Collingwood.
Nelson's reload on the 406s is 30. So that's how they're making up some of the difference.
So 3 guns less, but reload a bit faster. And they're a bit bigger.
But basically fire 6 to the Nelson's 5. I mean, it's going to come down to the armor layout. Because if it's got the wide armor view that Nelson has, that big, I'd say, very punchable face. She's got no extensions out towards the bow on her armor. And it's all 26 mils. So if Collingwood is running 16 on a similar layout, that's going to be a glass cannon.
Probably.
I mean, it'll be a familiar playstyle to anyone that has played the Nelsons, though. It's not going to be. It's just a variation on a theme rather than anything new, I think.
Angle up, hold the range, and punch away with armor piercing to a large extent. And use the high X to set fires if your target doesn't want to cooperate with getting its citadel hammered in. But
I mean, Collingwood has Sigma 2, I'm not sure what the Nelson has, and it has 19.1 range, so slightly more, I think, than the Nelson. So it's probably, like, Nelson isn't very tanky, except for his super heal. Collingwood is probably more squishy and a little bit more snipey than the Nelson.
Yeah, I think she's going to get a super heal, but actually, can you check that in the consumables on the current build? I don't have WoW's FT up at the moment.
We'll see if I don't know. I mean, this has just been announced, so I don't know if they'll have test ship. No, the only test ships at the moment they have are the Cyclops and the Edgar.
Right, and they probably haven't put it into the client build for data mining anyway. So we're going to have to wait and find out. So yeah, Collingwood, if she gets the super heal, she'll be interesting. If she doesn't, I suspect she's going to turn into a death trap very quickly. There's quite a lot of glass cannon about her at the moment.
I mean,
potentially, yeah.
They have removed the Nelson though, right? So basically, that might be just a replacement for the Nelson that's supposed to be slightly weaker, because Nelson.
Funny you should say that.
Well, it bring us to the related news of the latest Lighthouse auction, doesn't it? Yes.
Yes.
If you want to finance Wargaming's move to a new studio, you can now do so and get the Nelson at the same time by spending an awful lot of cash on a ship that used to be only a few free experience.
Yes, minimum 900 on sale, minimum bid 10,000 doubloons.
So not quite as much as, say, a tier 8 premium, but that's the buy-in price. You know, if you're getting it for 10,000, I'd be very surprised.
So would I. Plus, you know, it is Nelson. There'll be a fair few collectors who want her, but a lot of them probably went for it on the when she was around for free XP. More interestingly, 20,000 research points, minimum bid 200,000 coal. That's I want to say 375k. She was
I think so too, something like that.
I have a maybe. What was 750k then? Was that Missouri?
750 was Missouri.
Yeah, okay. Then probably was 375k.
The fun fact: Nelson was one of the first premiums that CCs got for free, and it was because of an accident. They accidentally credited all the CCs and Nelson, and they were like, "Oh, you cannot keep it," because it was in the day where you didn't like get to keep the premiums you tested as a CC. Nelson was one of the first, and it was an accident.
Yeah, I think I joined the program after that happened. So yeah, considering that, I mean, 20,000 research is what the equivalent of. Let me just grab the tech
I mean,
tree.
most of them are around. You need what, like 50, 60k research
Yeah.
points. So
I
about
mean,
a third of a ship.
Yeah, I mean, it's inefficient unless you've got a solid reserve of coal. And a typical coal ship, Forest Sherman, is 232,000 coal. So there are probably better ways of spending the coal. But if you really, really want that last gasp for a particular research ship, then I could see why people might go for it.
It would certainly be a big time saver over grinding out bits here and there.
Yeah, I mean, Druid's 56k, Colbert's 57, Gibraltar's 59, Slava is 63, and Siegfried is 47. Yeah, that basically the cheapest one going is 43, the Paolo Emilio, and all the rest start in the mid 50s, run up into the low 60s, depending on exactly what you want. So it's somewhere between 25 and 40% of a, 22, 23 and 40% of a research ship if you're drowning in coal and have nothing better to spend it on for some reason. Or you could grab a unique upgrade, of course, because those are coal now, aren't they? Yeah.
So, I mean, we've also got some, like we're saying, some stats given for the main branch battle cruisers, but is it worth going over those when we know they're...
When we know that the entire concept is subject to change? I'm gonna say that is so penciled and smokescreens that it probably isn't.
I mean, the only thing that might be interesting is St. Vincent, because it's one of the two concepts that they're testing. We haven't seen the other one, and we don't know if this concept's going to make it, and even if it's going to be changed. But it gives you a bit of an idea how they look, how they think the brawling line's going to look like.
True.
Like, for example, it has Sigma of 1.5, so they are really serious about this not being focused about long-range sniping.
Yeah, I mean, normally 1.5 is shotgun territory. You see those on the 12-barrel jobs. This thing only has 9 barrels. I mean, normally a 9-barrel, you'd expect a 1.8 Sigma, give or take.
Yeah, something along those lines. And it has 2 times 1 torpedo.
I suspect they will operate very, very like Mutsu's torps, except less easy to knock out.
And also with an even faster reload, because a single tube implies a reload of about 20 to 25 seconds.
Well, they've not given them quite that good.
It's 45 seconds reload.
Okay. Oh yeah, good point. 10k range. Yeah, that is a boot knife. That is definitely well, I need that last scrap of damage right now. On the other hand, 21,000 on the warhead. Okay, torpedo damage calculations are black magic voodoo, and we all know it, but it's going to hurt.
It would be potentially a nice top-up to your damage if you are forced into that very close range.
Like I say, it's a boot knife. It's your emergency holdout weapon. Let's see, 19.5k range is a bit short for a tier 10, but not unworkable. And they're 457s, so no overmatch, but I suppose the theory is you're not expected to be bow in for very long, are you?
Well, I mean, you overmatch 30.
And blam. Yeah, you overmatch 30, but you're not going to overmatch another tier 10 BB, and let's face it, that's what most people will tunnel in on. Still, Yamato has to have, well, Yamato and Incomparable and Shiki have to have their shtick, I suppose. Really? Do I need to get Atam a couple of live chickens and a sharp knife so that he may also teach me this voodoo?
No, nobody understands. I mean, we've all seen the formula, but we don't know the parameters that go in it, right? They require extensive testing for each ship individually, obviously.
As
Which
I say, it's easy
even
just to get a
Mouse.
reliable. Yeah, when Mouse can't figure the maths, you know it's arcane.
Mouse did some testing, I think, on some ships, but not even Mouse has a formula for all of the ships and how the torpedo damage works. It's that bad.
Yeah, I mean, we know it's a cubic damage blast rather than a spherical one. And beyond that, I say there's been a lot of guessing. There's been a lot of theories about alpha damage versus main damage and flooding. just stuff the torpedoes into it until it blows up. That's the simplest option.
Yes. And then wonder why it didn't blow up, because,
Yeah, well, angry submarine captain noises when something tanks 6 and comes right back. So, yeah, British battlecruisers, woo, at long last.
I think there'll be more than a few people happy to see this line.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, let's face it. Is there another line left that has been so widely anticipated? I mean, you could maybe make a case for the return of the odd-tiered carriers, but as many people are going to go torches and pitchforks on that as they are popping champagne.
I don't know if there's any lines left now that have that kind of prominence. I mean, we'll probably see. I mean, there might be enough designs for, say, a Japanese battle cruiser line, for example. Probably not an American battle cruiser line, but one never knows.
The Americans never did battle cruisers, did they?
No.
They converted the Lexingtons.
That's it, basically.
And that was it, yeah. The design just died with the fast battleships, so the Americans never went for it. We've got the Germans. Did the French ever experiment? I don't think they did.
Well, I mean, you could argue the toss about, the Dunkirks.
Fair point.
But yeah. I don't know if there was ever an explicit, we're going to make battle cruisers, so much as, well, this is what the Germans and Italians are doing, so we must counter it.
Yeah, battle cruisers, Tom, not super cruisers. And yes, I'm aware that that's a blurred line, and super cruiser is not a recognized USN classification. But aside from that, I mean, okay, maybe you could pull the Armagee and the Key out, replace Armagee with modernized Tosa or something similar, and try and scrape together a line from there. You could almost justify a line of Japanese aviation cruisers, but again, torches and pitchforks.
Yeah.
But I mean, split across, or do a line of Japanese light cruisers. You've got the Argonaut. You could split the 155 Mogami off, do 155 paper variants of Ibuki and Zao, and maybe try and make it work that way. But yeah, I mean, I think this might actually be the last big historical line, unless someone can pull up a navy from somewhere else.
I think we'll probably see odds and ends from, say, South American navies. I mean, the Atlantico is going to be the first of that.
And of course, coming up in Dockyard. But the South American Dreadnought race is its own thing and is an interesting bit of design history. But that kind of peters out by tier 6.
Yeah.
Historically.
I mean, well, you say historically. I mean, we've got the Atlantico at tier 8, so there's nothing, which is a sort of fictional modernized design. So there's nothing stopping Wargaming doing with that with other designs potentially.
Yeah, I mean, it's not
like
it doesn't have at least some paper in it at all, and the half lines like the subs and the carriers don't count, by the way.
I mean, it's not like the British were all built right, like the British battle cruisers.
No, I mean, let's roll back on this. So Collingwood, St. Vincent and Duncan never were, because G3 and I3 never got off the ground. We do not seem to have an N3 in this mix. So I wonder where that's going to appear, because that's maybe a side premium, or it turns into the Hawk. But then where is my retrofit hood?
Could be another premium.
Could be.
Belfast and Belfast 43. Well, you could have, your hood and your
hood 44.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could go either way on that. It's an obvious one in the tech tree, one as a premium option to do refit hood and Project M3 around about tier 8. But aside that, as I say, I'm kind of scraping the barrel for big lines after they put the British battle cruisers in. They can bring in the odd tier carriers and then muck around with the support carrier concept, but there's a certain feeling of, well, what else can you do unless you start looking at some relatively, at the risk of offending somebody, obscure navies.
Well, you can always take like a World War I ship and then say, what if they kept building this type of ship like they did with the German battle cruisers?
Well, they kind of do that in almost all the lines anyway, because the last thing in the British battlecruiser line as it stands that was actually built and launched is the Renown at 6.
Yeah.
7, 8, 9, and 10 are all paper to varying degrees.
But you could start with the paper at tier 3, right?
You could. Cough, Pan-Asian cruisers, cough. Although that's not entirely fair. A lot of them are sailed, but not necessarily with a Pan-Asian navy, I think is the best way to put it. So Ramat, for example, loads of Didos, just none of them served with the Thai navy, as far as I can recall. I will happily accept correction there if I'm wrong. But yeah, that brings us on to the third block. So from yesterday.
Yes. So they're mentioning the map again. What they don't mention is, like, you remember like a year ago where they basically, when they first said, hey, we have 2 new maps, they said. They have one that will bring an exciting new game mechanic that's basically already being tested or such. And then there will be a second new map where people can vote on how it looks and so that's in the early stages. And the first new map that apparently was very ready and brought in a new game mechanic never actually existed, it turns out, and has been forgotten.
I remember speculating about that, of like whether it was going to be drifting icebergs or something like that.
I wonder if they built it, modeled it, tested, and then realized that, hang on, this isn't actually fun.
Yeah, but you could still remove them.
They just quietly canned the project. And maybe, yes, you're right, they're just looking for a way to do it. But I would say that if any project's going to get canned for want of resources, it's something like that. Despite that, a lot of us would like, a new map is always good. More variety in the maps is always to be welcomed.
I will point out that the abandoning of entire kind of maps in progress, as it were, has happened numerous times in World of Tanks, rather, but they've usually been fairly, we had this concept for a map, but we just couldn't get it to work, so therefore we've canned it. So it would be nice, if that was the case, it would have been nice if they'd actually said that up front.
Or maybe it's on the back burner and they think, okay, this isn't working, but can we salvage it? And it's just been a relatively low priority project for them.
Maybe, yeah.
Honestly, considering that it was exactly at the time with the big uprising and they were trying to placate the community, I think they just made something up and then hoped nobody would remember. And now they do have, and then they started immediately development on an actual new map, which is coming now, because it's been a long time, right? They basically announced that map last summer. After the uprising, they said 2 new maps. That one seemed to have been a lie, and that's the one they might have actually only started back then.
Bear in mind also that the introduction of subs meant they had to effectively redo every tier 6+ map in the game, and arguably do more work on them because they had, well, how much of the terrain is underwater and how much of it is on land. And so I think that's where the map making team has been for the last 2 years, plus or minus.
Yeah, another thing we can thank Submarines for.
Hooray!
But hey, a new map. The screenshots look nice, and we'll see how it goes. They say what 11.5. What we are at 11.3 now? 11.2? No, 11.2.
We're on 11.2. So a couple of months. Again, subject to Dev Studio. So we'll see. But
so
yeah,
sometime in summer.
It looks good.
Yes.
We'll see what the layout looks like, and we'll see how it actually is to play. And of course, 11.4 we get the French things.
Yes, in early access.
Yes. Well, if they don't have tumble homes.
That's one of I've been playing. And this is a complete aside, but I've been playing a bunch of Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts, and it does have some quite delightful French tumble home hulls in it to play with. So I wish we could get such things in World of Warships. But
yes, what was it? How was it? Drac put it. What were French pre-dreadnoughts? When were French pre-dreadnoughts? Why were French pre-dreadnoughts? Yes, tumble home hulls. An excellent idea until you actually try to sail the blasted things.
That would be my dream. Is seeing one of those come in at tier 2.
What? Yes,
be companion alongside Mikasa.
Yes. What happens when an entire navy gets a visit from the Good Idea Fairy? But interesting, Cherbourg will potentially be free. I also have to admit, despite my raised eyebrow at the ship's structure, I do kind of like the camo that they're doing.
Yeah.
It
looks decent.
Not too gaudy, because sometimes they do go a bit too overboard, but it's relatively understated.
I have to admit, I think I prefer Toulons to the others, but Toulon to Marseille, depending on which version gets around. I think Toulon is being referred to as Enlightenment, where the others are Liberation. So I think that's going to be unique to Toulon. Although I can't help but note that it does have a very handy aim below this line for Citadel element to it.
Possibly.
I mean, on Toulon?
Yeah. But we don't know where the Citadel is, right?
I'd say your odds are pretty good unless it's a submerged Citadel.
Or raised Citadel.
Oh, if it's a raised Citadel, there's just aim below this line. Oh, hey, and you have a bit of a margin if the shells fly wide.
I mean, look, if this was a Minotaur, it would be just aim anywhere on the blue thing and you're fine.
True. This is undeniably the case. I wonder if they've got that spaced armor the regular French cruisers have, because that thing was hell for British light cruisers when we first tested it.
Having a Bartin style super hard to reliably damage ship.
It was more than that. It was the fact that the void space behind the outer layer basically meant British AP fuses detonated before they got to anything with a hit point attached. They've prettied up Marseille as well, which is kind of nice.
The port rather than the ship.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's not gonna cause confusion, is it?
Also, they are now adding arms race in random battles, and a particularly interesting part is they are not just adding arms race; they are removing epicenter.
Yeah. I'm a bit of a heretic in this regard. I don't mind epicenter as a variation on the regular capture zones, because it's nice to have a bit of a change and something to throw you off the regular strategies. Epicenter and Two Brothers was a dumb idea, but that's another matter entirely.
I
But
like
yes.
Epicenter in, I'd say, tier 6 and below, and I hate it in above. Right, Epicenter kind of works in the lower tier maps and with the lower tier ships, I feel like. But it's just a mess in higher tiers.
Yeah, true enough. The guy identified a steam pipe as a seawater feed. Oh dear, somebody needs to be beaten over the head with their pipe recognition manual. I mean, there are worse mistakes to make, anything involving a black water line, for example. But yes, mixing up the steam pipe and the seawater feed could be bad on an engine. That's a chat thing for anyone who's watching this on YouTube, by the way. So yeah, interestingly, new clan battle season, Kaiman, carriers, Petropavlovsk and Kgb have been banned, so clearly the Kgb murder swarm is still considered to be a bit of a meta breaker.
But it will have super ships, it looks like.
Yeah, 1 battleship and 2 super ships potentially.
I mean, it's essentially, this brings us back to the whole tier 10 plus tier 11 thing. I mean, just call them tier 11 and have done with it. Again.
Yeah.
We're going to be harping on about this one for a while, aren't we?
I imagine so, yes.
Still, no Eagle and no USS United States.
And I mean, no carrier.
True, but can you imagine those two having their own private little rampage?
I don't really want to.
Exactly. Apparently neither do Wargaming.
But it's fine, they're completely balanced. They just are too strong for competitive modes.
Well, if you think about it, they're, Eagle and USS United States, because of the even tiers rule, they're effectively tier 12.
Well, I mean, you could argue
That
that
might
the carriers
be why
are...
Wargaming don't want to refer to these things as tier 11, because then you end up saying, well, hang on, won't the carriers be tier 12s? That could get interesting. I mean, it'd break the matchmaker.
Yeah. On that note of breaking matchmakers, there is an update to Submarines. And, well, it's not very... it's not the most interesting thing. So they disabled the ability to launch conventional torpedoes at maximum depth, basically because they don't react to pings. Conventional torpedoes can't change their height anymore anyway, right? So basically, this is just an IQ check. They might not have that made clear enough to people. So people try to launch torpedoes at the maximum depth and then are confused why they don't rise, probably.
Possibly. I mean, that is actually the least significant change. I mean,
yes.
Fair point. I have used the simplified depth mechanics, and I've launched conventionals at max when I've been hunting another sub, when I have been very sure of my shot and I basically don't want to tip him off that I'm about to fire. But normally you go for homers for sub v sub anyway. The other two changes are the biggies. The first one is that the being detected now drains your battery has gone.
Yes.
And that is a huge thing for aircraft carriers. Yes, I know. Cancer to fight cancer. But of course, prior to this, the usual way you fought a sub was you spotted it and then you forced its submersion, then you kept it spotted, and you ran it out of air in short order. And now that's not an option anymore. So I have to wonder what they think subs are going to, what carriers are going to be able to do against subs.
I mean, fun fact: subs can stay at the depth where they are not spotted by planes, but can still count as periscope depth for their own purposes. So subs basically, if you just play with your up and down meter, right, you can basically get you can get the best of both worlds anyway. So, but yeah, it's basically a buff to submarines, right? It simplifies submarines because obviously Wargaming has realized that people are not good enough to.
That, and a lot of people pointed out that it made absolutely no damn sense whatsoever.
Well, I mean, that's Submarines in a nutshell.
Yeah,
it was a pure gameplay thing rather than
it was pure
any
game.
kind of-
Yes, I mean there was no. A lot of us were looking and going, "Why?" And the other thing is that sonar pings. Okay, this sounds small, but it is actually a biggie. Because you will no longer see sonar pings moving across the map. You will just get a visual effect, roughly if you are within several kilometers of the sub, but you won't get the precise location.
Yeah, I mean, there's some screenshots there. You see some like smoke-like thing. It also makes no sense why you would see that. But then again, I mean, as we've established, nothing about subs makes sense. It's a bit like the oil spill just in white. And maybe less precise. But the thing is that this requires you to have planes. Like the problem with submarines is the only really counterplay kind of thing are the plane depth charges. If you don't have plane depth charges, you're screwed anyway, right?
Well, you have to run over the sub if you don't have plane depth charges. But yeah, I've had a number of occasions where I'd see a sonar ping go past and I just bang depth charge planes back down that line. And you hit surprisingly often. This, depending on how far visible this pulse is, it could work out as a nerf, it could work out as a buff, because it looks like it's giving a pretty good indication of exactly where the sub was when it launched the ping.
I mean, the thing is that
we
ping was only...
We don't know the observation limit of it.
I'm not sure if there is one. Like, the ping was only visible 8 kilometers away, right? So I think they said that's why they implemented that, so that if they're further away, you can still see them.
Maybe.
They say the new effect will show approximate location of the sub.
Yes. We'll see. It depends how. If it works the way that it looks like it's working, I don't know. It might be enough to subs, because that looks like an invitation for, hey, you find your sonar. Now every depth charge plane within 15 kilometers is paying you a visit.
It does. I mean, if you're silly enough to sit still, then that would be a big problem for you. But if you're moving, people are going to have to try and account for that. So,
believe me, that's not. Bear in mind that we're talking about tier 6 and 8 bimbling along at maybe 10 knots. And if multiple battleships all send their planes to hammer the same area, you are not getting out of what will basically be the shotgun of doom.
Yeah, true.
But
well,
you have to remember that the other battleships won't see it, right? Because like the person that gets pinged realizes he gets pinged, but if just like a little bit of thing shows up on the ocean, no other battleship in the area will notice unless you really point it out to them and they actually pay attention to what you do.
That's the thing, everyone will see it.
Yeah, but like you don't constantly look at the ocean if there is a white foam somewhere, right? You don't get the sound notification, because only the one that gets pinged gets a sound notification. You don't see the ping travel anymore. Like it's a very good visual indication, but you have to know that there is something there to actually look, right?
Yeah, and I suspect that this is actually where the next change then comes into play, because they're tightening up the minimap controls.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah.
So we don't know if you'll be able to just double click on ping and go, look over here. And suddenly everyone starts depth charging away. But
well, I mean, if people pay attention.
Yeah, well, okay, that's a big if, yes.
But the thing is...
What I would like to see, and I don't, is the idea that they're splitting the minimap settings in the interface. I would love to see them made universal as part of the game settings. But that's been a long-standing moan of mine for a while now.
Yeah.
Because having to adjust for every single ship is a pain in the neck.
I mean, yes and no, because some things you don't want to enable it on some ships, or maybe you do want to enable it on some ships. Like, I could see that, for example, you don't need this. If you want a secondary range displayed on your secondary ship, but not on every other ships. If you have too many like circles on the minimap, it can be confusing, and you might want to activate different ones for every ship.
I'll give you that, but I would agree. I would perhaps then compromise a general settings, but with the option for a per ship override.
You're true. That would make sense.
But Wargaming don't seem too inclined to listen to me on that one, so it ain't happening anyway. We'll get an edit button on Twitter first.
It is nice, a nice idea in principle to be able to be a lot more precise instead of just this map square here.
Yes, although again, there's a question of how exactly it's. The double click. It suggests that the double click is going to be a ping rather than the highlighted grid square now.
I mean, the thing is, how often do you actually need, like, Yuzral's point for submarines is a good one, right? But unless it's a submarine that you want to click on, can you click on that on the minimap anyway that accurately? Because you probably don't see an indicator on the minimap necessarily. It's like most of the time, like if you ping it where RPF is, right? RPF isn't accurate enough to ping more than a square anyway. Or things like that.
Yeah, true. Again, it's one of those, it looks interesting, but let's see how it plays deals. But overall, it sounds like an improvement. I mean, more precision, more precise control, more precise communication cannot possibly be a bad thing, he says, crossing his fingers.
Well, I think it has limited use, but it's not a bad thing.
Yes. And a long-awaited event will be arriving in 11.4.
The Return of the Black.
Yes.
So once again, it's a special portal campaign because doing anything in-game would be too easy and convenient.
Anytime I see something like that, I can only think it's done on purpose to limit potential participation. There don't to be any other reason for it.
Or they're just having another go at tech testing it. That would be par for the course of wargaming. Although, as you say, I don't see what their angle is on that, unless they're planning to use it for collaborations or similar layers. What are you going to do on the web? Anything that makes you go out of the game client is automatically slightly suspect, in my book. Hello, Sally. But yes, the black is back, possibly in black, although not entirely, with the new camo that she's going to have available. Sorry, I couldn't resist the pun. So
it's very stark, that white hull and black superstructure with red. I wonder if that's based on anything particular, or someone was just like, yeah, that looks cool.
I think it's that looks cool. Look at the figurehead.
Yeah.
Someone has gone, that looks cool. And to be fair, it is sui generis, so the name is accurate.
True.
But aside from that, Portal Campaign Black will be made available in the armory in exchange for coal. What we don't know is how many tokens you're going to be able to earn and how much of a discount that will eventually represent on the 24,000 doubloons that Black's base price will cost during the event.
24,000 tokens, I should hasten to correct you, rather than doubloons.
Which 24,000 tokens, which can be purchased with doubloons at a rate of 1-to-1.
Oh, I see. Yes, that's true.
Yeah. So we know that you can get up to 2,500 token. Oh, right. Okay.
Black itself will be available to purchase for 19,300.
Yowzers. Okay, this is actually more expensive than I thought it was at first glance, because it's a sequential bundle, isn't it? So to unlock all the bundles, you need 24,000 tokens. You can earn 2,500 during the course of the Portal campaign.
So you need to buy all others.
Another 21,500 doubloons to finish the bundles, and then another 19,300 on the black. Hands up, who's just going to wait for the coal?
So basically, right, you get only 2,500 tokens for free. You need the 24,000. You need to buy the other tokens. You don't even have a chance of earning them.
Unless we're missing something really important about some other way of earning tokens. By my reckoning, that is 19,300 plus 21,540. Somebody check my maths here. 40,800 doubloons.
So you pay more doubloons for the camo than you actually pay for the black, and the ability to buy it. Right. First, you need to go through the campaign, and then the campaign only gives you a camo, and then you earn the right to pay even more money to actually get the black. Or you could just wait and spend coal, because I don't think any of this is required for the coal, right?
Yeah, or you just wait and spend the coal, yes. I think most people will wait and spend the coal here. Either we have missed something very, very important in our maths, or people are just going to spend the coal if they want the black. So, and of course, you can use the ship's armory coupon, which will be refreshed in June, as they helpfully point out. So I have this feeling we are missing something very important about this event, because this makes no sense.
There must be some, like 2,500 earnable ones is an astonishingly low amount compared to the total required.
Yeah.
Did they typo? Did they mean to say 25,000?
Well, that wouldn't make any sense either, necessarily. So,
well, it would get all the bundles and then set you up to drop the 19,003 on the black. So we're missing something important here. This just makes no sense as it stands. So either Wargaming are off their rockers, or we are getting something very badly wrong.
I mean, the thing is, not everybody has the. Well, it's within Yamari. So basically, the balloon option is for people impatient, people who don't understand that it's coming for coal afterward, or for people who don't have the coal and, well, are impatient, I guess, right? So the only reason to spend money is if you really want the camo, or if you're really that impatient. But it's a lot of money.
Well, it's not even that. Actually, no, is the Sui Generis going to be available separately? You will have the option to get the themed and the permanent camo. So that's going to be in. So presumably that's the Sui Generis camo, which will be in the bundle sequence. I don't get it. I really don't get it. I don't see how anyone could look at that, do the analysis, and think they're going to make any money.
Oh, trust me, Wargaming is going to sell them like hotcakes, probably.
Well, yeah, but normally you can see why Wargaming is going to sell them like hotcakes. I mean, the three of us are looking at this and we're scratching our heads.
Yeah, but I would never spend 80,000 doubloons on a ship that's going to be free in 2 months because of early access, and yet people are doing it.
I got nothing.
I mean, think about it like this: this black with a special camo is only half as expensive as a tier 10 tech tree ship in early access.
Yes. On the bright side, one thing that has come in is that they're reverting a change they made in the armory a couple of patches back. So Leningrad, Exeter, and Ishizuchi are going in favor of the random premium containers. So
that's nice.
Hooray for audience pressure, I suppose. And then we've got a variety of miscellaneous assets being added, because of course the 80th anniversary of Midway is coming up this summer.
Oh yeah. Plus, I'm stuff for Swedish history fans as well.
Yes. I'm assuming that the Vasa patch will not sink your ship the moment you leave the dock.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Just don't stick it on anything that has cannon ports.
Technically, that would be everything below about tier 6. When do casemate secondary? Actually, no, Nagato's got casemate secondaries, and that's a 7. Constellations, and yeah, I think Constellations still got. No, they went back to 5-inch turrets with that. Yeah, let's not go that way. And of course, various historical commander portraits as well.
Yes. Although probably no unique voices or anything.
Probably. I suspect at least some people would start yelling blasphemy if you dared to voice the likes of Arleigh Burke.
Well, I mean, you have a voice anyway. You could give, even if you can't like make the proper voice, you could have special sayings.
True enough. But yeah.
Yeah.
I just don't understand what they're shooting for with this black event.
Money for house moving.
I mean, money, yes, obviously,
Yeah.
but I don't see how the business unit has looked at that and decided that that's the optimum way to make a load of cash. Maybe they just figure it's one last gasp at the bar before they have to honour their promise to put it out for coal.
Yeah.
I think they'd offer more than just a camo for that, but I don't know.
Well, they do mention that there's a pile of commanders, patch, flag, and at least there was something about some signals and expendable camos as well if you plow through the weeds. But again, we're missing a lot of hard data on this. And I think we are missing something really important here, because I don't see how you're going to persuade people to part with close to, well, a bit over 40,000 doubloons to get all of that.
Honestly, from what I've seen, how Wargaming monetizes the game, they have the whales that will just spend it.
Well, yes, but there's a question of, if you rely on the whales, you don't have much resilience, because eventually the whales buy everything. You're far better off trying to tempt in a lot of minnows and still have a few whales on the side.
But look, they've now twice in a row used this is already the third time in a row where the early access is 80,000 doubloons for up to the tier 10 ship. And they wouldn't bring that back if it wouldn't work.
A few whales, yes.
I mean, it's ludicrous, but it seems to work, or they would have stopped doing it.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with them making money from whales. I'm just not sure it's optimal for making the best sustainable profit. But clearly, their business unit's numbers are coming out with a different conclusion. So they know their business better than I do, and, well, consider that more an admission of ignorance on my part than anything else. No, you could go for Albacore tuners if you want, but I'm not sure how that market analogy would work, Sully.
What's an albacore tuna? Is that like a special breed of tuna?
It's a variety, I think. Give me a second. Well, in doubt, ask Google.
Well, while he's doing that, you can also go over quickly that they are replacing the specific Leningrad Exeter and Ishizushi premiums available in the community tab for community tokens for premium ship containers instead. So instead of just those specific ships, you'll have a chance of getting whatever ships are in the ship list of those containers.
Apparently by popular demand.
Yeah, I think so. But has the like how accurate is the ship list? That would be interesting. Like, has that been updated recently, or is it still an old list?
I'm not aware of any changes, but it would be. Well, I presume you'd have an opportunity to update the list, and as long as people know what is on the list and what the odds are, I mean, you pay your tokens, you take your choice.
Yeah, I mean these days they should list the odds because they have committed to that sorta.
Yeah. It's interesting to see they're explicitly pulling in the by popular demand thing. If I'm reading that right.
Yeah, at the request of players. I mean, if they once in a while listen to players, they want to point it out very heavily. Look, we listened.
I mean, if it's encouraging good behavior for wargaming, so hey, I'm not gonna complain when they do that.
No, it's nice to see that sometimes they listen.
Yeah, and
no, we only need them to listen about subs and get them removed.
Well, who knows?
I think that would be a lot of listening. But yes,
I think that about concludes the topics. Or has there been something else?
I don't think so. But let me pop the various info feeds.
They've actually made a news article about how their menu or like how their settings work, but it's more about, I think, graphic settings. It's audio, what else have they here? Sounds,
I think it's one of the main things they've done, why they've done that article is that the AMD...
the FSR scaling.
the super scaling tech. The equivalent of whatever I can't remember what it's called with NVIDIA now, but
basically they're sharpening tech.
Yeah,
pretty much. But at least they're going to the trouble of explaining it. So they're saying what is the difference between MSAA and temporal AA.
I mean, that's nice. They could have also included a section about all the game-relevant features and that people should turn off on, like the alternate interface and stuff like that. But hey.
Indeed. Also, do bear in mind that there are hidden token buttons in the settings article. So even if you have got your client tweaked, it is worth going in there and getting your goodies.
I've actually got in the habit now of every couple of days I'll go and look at the new articles and click the hidden buttons. Or not so hidden.
That's what they want.
Well, basically.
But aside from that, I don't think anything has come out while we've been talking. Let me just yank into the Reddit for a moment.
Yeah, we've talked about the bobbing of submarines a little bit before. Flamma has made a new video showing that it's possible, like something that Wargaming, I think they already had it removed, or said they removed it, so that you play with your depth in a submarine and get the best of all worlds. That's working right now. And we all know that submarines are more tanky than the tankiest destroyer and have things like that. But we already knew how fucked up submarines were anyway.
Possibly. Also, someone has spotted another anime-esque World of Warships ad in the Asia region, although that could mean anything or nothing. And sightings of the support CVs leaking. So Taiho is now up to tier 10. That's not a huge surprise. With an SCV, which I assume is support CV marker after it. Over on the subreddit, so that got leaked out. I mean, no real surprise for anyone, but other than that, I don't think there's a great deal of interest in the subreddit. No, nothing that really jumps out at me.
Yeah, so... Sorry.
wrap things up there?
Yeah, I guess we can.
Okay. So yeah, I think we have pretty much covered what has been a rather unusual week. It's not often real life intrudes on shooty boats to quite such a degree, but we'll see where it goes. It might even end up working out for Wargaming if they get fresh blood onto the program. So
might
Well,
even work out
We didn't
for
even
us.
speculate about what it might mean for the CC program, kind of thing. So yeah.
Oh yes, because of course that was completely centralized in St. Petersburg, wasn't it?
Yes.
Mind you.
But like a lot of the community people
assume they could
are
regionalise
elsewhere
it.
anyway.
Yeah, I was going to say Conway, Chrysantos, and the rest are in Prague. The American side in Austin. I remember the CC program used to be regionalized. It was only 3 years ago, give or take, when was a bit more now, when they brought it all under one unified program under St. Petersburg. So we'll see where that goes, I suppose. I imagine it'll be a lot of things will basically go into maintenance mode and don't rock the boat until the new studio is spun up.
Yeah, maybe we'll have more news about that in the future.
Just like everything else, yeah, we'll have to wait and see.
Indeed.
Yeah, and I guess with that, we'll call it a night. Thanks everyone for coming around. Thanks for joining us again, Yuzral. Where can we find you?
Thank you for having me. Most of the time I can be found smeared into a thin paste in the lands between. And if you want to watch the process of that happening, twitch.tv/Yuzral, typically 6 p.m. BST, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and occasional other games, 1400 BST on a Saturday.
Yeah, and with that, have a good night, everyone, and see you next time.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm sure Jedi's waving.
Yes.
Even though you can't see me, force a habit.
He might even be wearing pants, but we don't know.